Welcome to Hollywood and Sip. I'm your host, Kat Smith, and with me today is Kristen Howerton, who is the author of a new book, new-ish book. We were going to talk about it right when it came out, but now it's been out a couple months. Rage Against the Minivan, Learning to Parent Without Perfection, which I think is extra important right now. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
And full disclosure, we are in full-on kitchen mode for 4th of July, so you may hear some clinking and clinking of the cooking going on in the background.
Oh my gosh, we're doing the same thing.
Are you?
Mm-hmm.
I've asked for no power mixers, but we'll see how we go. So I wanted to start by reading just one little paragraph from your book, if that's okay with you.
Yeah.
Instead of feeling comfortable, confident, and awash in baby cuddles, I felt completely unequipped. Frequently, I found myself looking around and feeling like I was the only mom experiencing so much chaos. As it turns out, I'm not the breezy mom in linen, effortlessly picnicking with her children in picturesque tableaus. I am the mom who forgets water bottles at playgroup, who forgets sunscreen at the beach, who forgets to pack lunch for preschool, and who remembers the helmet as we are pulling up to the skate park. I am the frazzled and sweaty mom who misses appointments and yells more than she'd like to admit. I am the mother who has left baby poop on her shirt way longer than what is sanitary or appropriate. As soon as I read that paragraph, I was like, this is the book for me.
Oh man, it's true. And my kids are teens now, but I still feel like I'm flailing. I don't know.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. So I helped to raise my nieces from the time that I was there when they were born. So from that time. And now I have girls in my life that have been with me longer than they haven't been with me.
Yeah.
So they're a little older than I was introduced to the babies. So I don't feel like there's a point where that stops being true. Even though maybe now you're not forgetting diapers, you're forgetting other things.
Oh gosh, it's so true. And you're still just clueless. Like, I don't know. There's so many things that happen as a mom that there's no handbook for. And now we're in the middle of a pandemic. Like where's the book on this? Where's the handbook for this?
Right. That's what you should be writing now. But as you mentioned in your press release, okay, it sounds good on paper, but there isn't really that time.
Yeah, no, there isn't. It's wild. And so many of us now are trying to figure out parenting, as our kids have been home for months, and, I'm a working mom, and, there's no camps, everybody's just home full time.
All the time. They don't go anywhere.
No.
Well, and you've got a full house because you had 4 kids in 4 years. And I want to ask you too, because that included adoption. So what was that journey?
Yeah, my family building journey was definitely didn't go according to plan. When I decided I was ready to have children, I struggled with infertility, and then I struggled with multiple pregnancy loss. And so, even just becoming a mom was challenging. And then I decided to adopt. I adopted my first child from foster care, and he was my foster child for 3 years before I was able to adopt him. So there was a lot of unknown and a lot of just, ambiguity around, okay, is this child going to be my son forever? Or is this going to be a child that I fostered for a few years and then, I'll not know. So it was very fraught. But we did end up being able to adopt him. And then I had a full-term pregnancy, and then I had another full-term pregnancy. And then during that, we adopted another child from Haiti. So all my kids, I had no kids, and I struggled with becoming a mom. And then suddenly all 4 of them came within 4 years of each other.
And then am I correct that you split up sometime after that?
I got a divorce about 3 years ago. Yeah. So when my kids were about 8, 10, and 12.
So now you're like the Brady Bunch, but all on your own.
Yes.
You've got the big blended family, but you're the only parent.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's, single parenting is not for the weak, but you do what you have to do.
Exactly. And then, so you have so many stories that I just don't even know where to start. So I want to start with, why did you decide to write a book about your parenting experience?
Yeah. I've been a blogger for about 10 years, and I had a lot of people saying, you should write a book, you should write a book. But that always felt a little overwhelming. And I wanted to make sure if I ever wrote a book And I didn't want it just to be a collection of blog posts. I wanted to have something to say. I wanted there to be a linear journey. And so I just think it took me a while before I was at the place where I felt really ready to kind of look at my experience as a parent with some perspective, and I really felt like I had something to say. And that was that I just really feel strongly that mothers in particular, I mean, all parents, but especially mothers, just have a lot of unrealistic expectations about what parenting should look like and what motherhood and, even just being a woman should look like. And I just feel like a lot of it is garbage, and we need to learn how to let ourselves off the hook and learn how to opt out of certain expectations. And then and then in doing that, then we can figure out, what do we want to opt into, right? Like what do we give up so that we can have more of what we want with our kids?
That just made me realize something, in that what's so powerful about you writing a book like this is I think we're in a time where social media kind of creates false impressions of people's lives because they're posting the perfect moments.
Oh, yeah.
And so when somebody writes a book like this, where like every moment you're saying, I'm not perfect, this is not a perfect journey, you give us something to connect to so that we feel better about our journey.
Yeah. And that was important to me because, I have been a blogger and a, quote unquote influencer for a long time. And I have watched a lot of other influencers who just post these kind of dreamy highlight reels of life that are just, not realistic. It's kids in gingham on, in dreamy landscapes. And, there may be moments of that as a mother, but man, I mean, that doesn't share the full picture. And I've always really felt a responsibility to share the full picture and to talk about motherhood in terms of identity and in terms of, being honest about the challenges and also the rewards. I mean, I love being a mom, I really do. And I'm so grateful for my kids, but I found the endeavor to be incredibly difficult. And I think most of the women I was in conversation with did as well. And I think a lot of it is because we have, we're comparing ourselves to, as you said, this highlight reel of other moms on the internet that just, it doesn't match up with what real life looks like. And I wanted to share a picture of real life.
I chuckled a little bit when you said there are those moments in there, because yes, we all have those moments of the perfect picture, but I'm thinking to my digital camera, which is now so much better than a film camera, because what you don't see behind that one perfect moment is that it took me probably 200 photos to get to that one perfect moment.
and someone rolled their eyes and someone was like, ugh,
Do I have to? Why am I wearing this?
Absolutely.
So I'm going to ask you a loaded question. Is there a right way to raise kids?
It's not loaded for me because I think the answer is a resounding no. There is no right way to raise kids. And I think, anyone who tells you there is selling you a load of goods. I mean, I think every mother is different. Every family is different. Every child is different, and we all have our own values. We all have, our own insecurities. We have the things that are important to us and the things that aren't important to us. And I think the key is just recognizing who we are and then who we are raising, right? And then adjusting from there. And what's right for me is not going to be right for other moms. I have a really unique family with 4 very different kids. And even the ones that are biologically related, it's not because I adopted. Like, I have 2 biological daughters who are as different as night and day. And those are the kids I'm parenting, not some dream kids, right? Like, not some little mirror of myself that I can imagine. Like, they're different. They're different even from me. And, each of us has to look at what we have and the life that we're in. And, some of this even goes back to privilege, of like, being a stay-at-home mom isn't realistic for every mother. We have to look at what we have and then adjust our expectations from there.
And I want to pause to give you a compliment, because I read one of the reviews on your book where they said, this is a laugh out loud funny book. And I was reading it on my Kindle in the backyard one afternoon, and I stopped. I every so often I would just start laughing, and the kids were like, what's so funny? I can't even explain it to you because you are not going to understand, but this woman knows me.
Well, I think I use humor as a coping skill. I always have. And I think the reason that the book resonates is that it's funny because it's true, right? Like it's funny because we've been there. And I
Yeah.
think I'm probably just speaking things that maybe people haven't said out loud. And
Yeah.
so, I think that humor helps us cope with the things that are overwhelming.
So aside from having 4 kids, you are also a blogger, a podcaster, author, of course, and licensed therapist. How do you find time to do all of that with 4 kids?
Uh, I have terrible boundaries in self-care and I don't sleep. No, I mean, I can't do all of it at once. I really can't. And that's a big message of my book is, feminism has given us the gift of being able to do whatever we want, but we can't do it all at once, so I pulled back from blogging while I was writing a book. While I'm licensed, I haven't practiced psychotherapy in several years because I couldn't keep that up with the rigors of parenting while being, a blogger. And so I'm multifaceted, but I just have recognized like I can do 1 or 2 things well at a time. And then the other things I can come back to.
Yeah. And would you please tell us about your kids biking through poop, creating a literal poop storm?
Yes, this was a story that I put in the book that happened. I want to say I had 2 kids at the time, and my son was like 3 and my daughter was 1. And I decided we were going to go and have one of those picturesque moments that, I dreamed of from some inspirational Instagram account, I'm sure. And we were going to walk to the beach. And so I had my daughter in a stroller and I had my son who was 3. He wanted to ride a bike on training wheels. And it was about a mile, and about maybe a quarter of the mile in, he rode his bike through what I hope was dog poop. I'm not really sure. There was poop on a sidewalk. He rode the bike right through it. And as he's riding then in front of us, it is like kicking up poop from the tires and hitting my daughter and myself as we're walking. But, he's 3, and you can't tell a 3-year-old like, oh, hey, we're not going to go to the beach now. We're going to stop. We're going to, he was so determined, like this was a new bike. This was the first time he'd done it. And so, yes, it ended up being basically a Frogger game of me trying to avoid the poop kicking up from the back of his tires on the way down to the beach.
That's awesome. And that just reminded me, not to steal your mommy moments, but it reminded me of a time when I was shopping with my niece and she was still in diapers, and she was still like, if she was on my hip, she was always happy. If I put her down, she wasn't happy.
Oh, yeah.
So I was carrying her through the store and managing this basket, and she had we used to call it turbo when she would poop, and it was so much that it would come out of the diaper just everywhere, right? So she had a turbo in the store, and I looked at her and I looked at my basket and I said, we have been here too long. I am getting through this line. So the poor people around me in the line are like, what is wrong with you? I'm like, you don't understand.
Yeah. You just got to keep going. You can't stop.
Exactly. So you mentioned that you're now into the teenage years. Mm-hmm. And I have a new teenager and a tweenager. And you talk early on about toddler tantrums. I'm wondering if you have any advice for someone who has tweenager tantrums. And by the way, my life is in danger because they're here listening. So.
Oh, well, your earmuffs, teenagers. I honestly think teenagers get a bad rap. I do. And I think, part of the teenage developmental process is them individuating from their parents. And that's just a fancy psych term for they want to be their own person. They're trying to forge, who am I apart from the people that are, the adults that are in my life. And the result of that is sometimes they can do some really weird and dumb things, right? And sometimes their feelings are communicated in not the best ways because they haven't learned to use I statements. They haven't learned to, talk appropriately about their feelings. And so sometimes they're talking in hyperbole, and sometimes they're talking in sarcasm, and sometimes they're, taking the big feelings they have and blaming them all on you. And I think it's just so important to remember when our teenagers are emoting that there's probably something underneath. Like they rarely lead with the actual issue. they're usually leading with something else that's going on, or something external, or something frivolous. And so not taking that personally, I think, is really important. And then empathizing even when you don't agree, right? So if my daughter comes home from school and says, everyone at school hates me, I have no friends. Well, I don't think that's probably true, but I can empathize and say it must feel really frustrating and scary to feel like you have no friends. That must feel, and I can empathize and attune with her without feeling the need to be like, do you really have no friends because you just had someone over yesterday? And which is our first impulse, right, is to argue. And so I think just empathizing and then not taking it personally. I mean, those are the two tools in my toolbox that keep me from imploding my teens.
And is it okay if we go to the bathroom, cry a little bit, and then come out calm to empathize?
That's required.
That's required. Okay.
Yes.
And so you are raising both Black and white children, and there's a lot happening in both communities right now. What are some of the lessons that you are learning and working through with your kids right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's been really interesting to watch, because I think parents of Black children, whether you're white or Black, many people are raising Black children. I think that it's almost like the world is catching up with the reality that we've known for a long time, which is that Black children, Black adults are treated with more suspicion. They are handled with more violence. They receive, a lot of bias and a lot of stereotyping, both from the community at large and then from law enforcement. And these are conversations that I've been having with my boys, who are both Black, for the last 10 years. I mean, as soon as they were really old enough to be out in the world, because you have to. And so it's been interesting. And honestly, I mean, I'm devastated by the death of George Floyd, but I'm grateful for the national conversation, because it needs to happen. It really does need to happen. And, I'm grateful that people are beginning to, more white people are beginning to really grapple with these issues and to pay attention, because a lot of us have been saying it for a long time and really not been heard. And I think it's just gotten to a tipping point where we can no longer ignore it. And so we have to make some changes.
And I'd also like to announce, by the time this show airs, my other show, Sonoma Kids Ask the Experts, will have aired, and it's going to be replayed on YouTube. And our last conversation was about George Floyd, Black Lives Matter, the riots, the protests, all of those things. So if you have kids in your house, I broke it up into segments because we had a really long conversation, because this discussion warranted it. And so I wanted it to be in good chunks that your kids could absorb and then go back and focus on the next part. So go look for that at YouTube. Yeah. So Facebook.com/Sonoma Kids Ask to find that information. And it's not just good for Sonoma kids. The experts are from Sonoma, but all kids can learn from this.
That's great. Yeah. And I think, it's interesting because I talked about these topics in my book, well before this became a national conversation. And I was kind of like, I don't know if this fits in a parenting book, but it just felt really important for me to talk about. And so, in the book, I do talk about how to talk to kids about racism and what white privilege really means. And, I try to handle it in a way that, white people who are maybe just at the forefront of talking about these concepts can understand. Because I think it's just really important for people to, let go of some of the defensiveness and really engage in these conversations, which can be difficult.
Yeah. And I think as grownups, a lot of us are really having trouble finding the discussions and knowing how to stay out of the way and learning to listen and all of those things. So just imagine how hard it is on the kids.
Yeah.
But then again, at the same time, I think the kids are more receptive to the new information and being open and honest about their feelings.
I think you're really right, actually. And I think that there is less defensiveness. They have not been swimming in some of the systemic, racism that many of us grew up in. And I think their peers are I think they're all a little more open. I think the younger generation, it's been interesting to watch my younger kids, really lean into all of this and see their friends leaning into it. And some of their friends that are showing up at protests and posting stuff online, they don't have parents that are down. you know?
Right. Yeah.
The young people are, they're engaged in this.
So I want to move on to this book is a memoir. And I think a lot of people think, well, I wait till I'm really old and then I write my stories, right?
Yeah.
But you're clearly not really old. So what advice do you have for people who might have those stories out there that they might want to share?
Yeah, I mean, I read memoirs all the time, and I don't think that I don't feel like it's necessarily about age. I feel like writing a memoir is really about having a perspective that you want to share and having enough experience to be able to flesh out that perspective in the stories of your life, which is really what I did. I mean, I ended the book in the middle of the teenage years, and I even said, I'm ending this book rounding the corner into the teenage years, and I still don't know what I'm doing, right? But I did learn lessons. I didn't arrive at a destination, but I could share on the journey, and on my journey, it looked like me learning to let go of outcomes, me learning how to stop catastrophizing about things, me learning to let myself off the hook. But I think every person has probably had life experiences that have taught them lessons that could be told to others.
I think even in this time right now, I mean, we can all become documentarians at this moment because each person out here, we're in a world pandemic and none of us have gone through this before. And there's so many different perspectives out there that you could just sit down and write your own experience. And it's going to be very different than maybe even your neighbors.
Oh, yeah. I think people should be writing, not necessarily thinking I'm going to write a book, but I think everyone should be journaling during this pandemic because, what a thing to share with your kids or your grandkids or to have your kids write their experience of this pandemic and have that be something to look back on. It's so unique. And I do think we should be cataloging, this time in life. It's wild to live through.
And I've been we made a joke at the beginning that people are saying now you finally have time to write your novel and how that isn't true. But I personally have written over 150,000 words since day one of stay at home. Like I've been writing every day just because I feel like it's important for self-care also, not just to document what we're going through, but it helps me process. We're in a house full of people all the time. So this gives me a moment to talk to myself.
Oh gosh, yes, totally.
Yeah.
I feel that. Yeah.
But that also led me into, so Selfcare, you have a podcast also.
Yes.
It's Selfie, the podcast. Do you want to tell us about that?
Yeah. So Selfie is a podcast about self-care hosted by a woman who struggles with self-care. So, and that's really why I did the podcast. And it's very much in the same spirit of the book in that I don't have it figured out. And what was fascinating to me for the podcast was I wanted to answer the question, not just what does self-care look like? And when I say self-care, I don't mean bubble baths and masks, although sure, those are great, but I'm talking about the self-care of like tending to your mind and being in good relationships and, taking care of your health and, getting your mammogram. I mean, it encompasses mind, body, spirit. We talk about things that are fluffy. We talk about face serums, but we also talk about like boundaries. But I really wanted to explore different aspects of self-care, but also that question of why do we struggle with it? Because most of us know what self-care looks like, right? Like I know I should eat more vegetables and go exercise and take time for myself. So then why don't I go do that? Why do I spend an hour like flipping through my phone instead of taking care of myself? And so we're looking at that too. We talk a lot about just like, what are the barriers to our own self-care, and what are the things that are keeping us from caring for ourselves like we should. So we have guests, we have experts, but we also, it's a very laid back podcast. Like my co-host Rue and I do a self-care check-in with each other every week. And half the time we're like, I'm failing, so it's a very relatable podcast. And I will say this, we have a very active Facebook community it's predominantly women where we talk about everything. We talk about periods, we talk about perimenopause, we talk about sex, And it's a great, super supportive group for anyone who's really looking to, you know, have like those conversations that you maybe don't want to have on your main Facebook page where your dad can see it.
Oh, for sure. And I subscribed today, and I'm looking forward to, I've already picked which episode I'm going to listen to first. It's your most recent one on parenting teens and the middle space.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a good one. That was with Melanie Schenkel, who is one of my favorite writers, and she's hilarious. So we had a good conversation. Although I will tell you, what's funny is our most popular episode ever was about pubic hair. Apparently a lot of people wanted to hear us talk about that.
About the moms or the children's? Because I can
moms.
see both discussions being very popular.
We have definitely had both discussions, but we were talking about women and you know, what to shave or not to shave. I mean, we talked about all of the options, but people loved that episode.
And bejeweling and all those other ridiculous things.
We talked about all of it. We had a friend on who had done a vajacial, which apparently is a thing. Facial for your vagina. Who knew? You know, we're no stone
only the
left
people
unturned.
At YouTube see that I'm stumped right now. Oh, I can't wait to listen to that show. It sounds amazing. So we've given some advice for parenting during the pandemic, but even better, during the stay-at-home orders, do you have like a couple top tips that you can give?
Yeah, I actually did write a bonus chapter on parenting in a pandemic as the book was coming out. And, you know, what I talk about there is, I mean, first of all, I think all the more we've got to let ourselves off the hook, right? Like if the kids are indulging in more screen time than usual, if our meals are, you know, frozen chicken nuggets and frozen fries that we dump into the microwave, you know, we really have to let ourselves off the hook. I think that's a big one. I think also understanding that we're all under a lot of collective stress, like that this is really affecting everyone psychologically. And so we're all going to be underproductive. We are. And, you know, there are some people who are finding the energy to write that novel or to bake that bread, but some of us are just like getting through the day. And that's okay. That you don't need to feel like you have to do some life's work or there's no such thing as a productive pandemic, right? We're just surviving. We're just getting through this. So I think really lowering our expectations is key.
That just reminded me of all of the posts I'm seeing on sourdough starters. I am not starting any sourdough. Sometimes I don't want to get out of my pajamas.
No, and you know what? Here's the thing. For those for whom that feels, you know, like a sanity saver, then that's amazing. But you know, everyone's different. Like some of us are making sense of this time by reorganizing all of our drawers, and some of us are making sense of it by like binge watching a series on Netflix, and it's all okay. Like however you have to get through this is okay.
I have a friend who constantly tells us that every day. She's like, it's okay. If you do one thing today, it's okay.
Yes. Yeah, because it you know, there is, I mean, just neurologically, like we're all hypervigilant. We're all taking in news. We're living in, you know, there's fear for everybody. And then, you know, as the case counts are going up, I mean, in California, it's like, it's starting to be like, I'm knowing people getting sick, you know, and it's very stressful to live under all of that, you know, that kind of ambiguous stress. And then there's just the real life stress of like, oh my gosh, my kids haven't been out of my sight in 3 months and I can't go and do the things that I used to do to feel normal and good. You know, I can't go out to eat. I can't go to a movie. Like, you know, we've lost a lot of our coping skills. And so we all just have to, you know, do the very best we can. And that's enough. That's okay. Like world's okayest moms right now.
I love being the world's most okayest mom.
Yes. Yeah, that's all we're aiming for.
And with the homeschooling, I have learned that I am not smarter than a fifth grader. I'm so not looking forward to sixth grade.
Oh, you know what I've learned? I don't know how to do math at all. Not at all. I have a fifth grader. She's coming to me for help. I'm like, dude, I don't know. I don't even know. Is this math? Are these letters math? I don't know.
Yes. Wait, this is math? Why does it come in a paragraph?
Right.
Well, we have been talking to Kristen Howerton, the author of Rage Against the Minivan, Learning to Parent Without Perfection. So where can people find the book, your blog, the podcast, all of the things?
Yeah, everything is linked up on KristenHowerton.com. That'll give you a link to all my social media, where I'm Kristen Howerton at just about everything. That'll give a link to the book. And then there's a link to the blog there as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much for chatting with me today.
Yeah, good to talk with you.
I'm going to find you on Facebook. I think I just need to follow you everywhere.
Do it.
Okay. Bye.